Um, as he said, I'm Ariel Strong. I am a former wildland firefighter. It's been a few years. Um, and now I am a drone pilot after having spent a lot of time in the Valley doing software development. So you can tell I'm kind of a nerd with drones and software. So this is my kind of topic. So hopefully you'll enjoy it as well, because there's a lot that's been happening in the world of wildfire tech in the last few years. And we certainly need it, right? Okay, because we have a problem. We've got more frequent wildfires. They're longer, they're bigger, they're more severe than what we've seen in the past. So we need all the help we can get, because the conditions that we expect in the future are going to continue to be reduced precip, higher temperatures. We've got more people coming into the area that is interlaced with forest. And we have resource funding and availability issues as well. So kind of uncertainty around that a lot of times. Oh, the button. Okay, so as with most things, we humans get fascinated by, one of our first technologies was fire, right? How to start fires, what to do with it. We're still fighting them today. But technology gives us a way to extend what we can do, what we can perceive, how fast we can do it, perhaps, how economically we can do it. And there's about 4 different main areas where fire technology stands to help us out quite a bit. Those are intelligence, which is basically data gathering and to make decisions. And fire is becoming more and more data driven all the time, because it enhances safety. It gives you more information to work with when you're making decisions about how you're going to deploy resources, who, what, where, how. And there's a lot of data. Think imagery data from satellites, historical data, weather data, current weather and fire behavior, air samples, chemical samples, you name it. Somebody's collecting data somewhere that has some bearing on what people in wildfire management need to know. Readiness, that's pretty much the thing that all of us here, I'm assuming most, if not everyone here, but maybe not on the Zoom call, are Flagstaff residents. But it's cold, wet, snow right now, but it's not going to be too long before we need to start thinking about how to prepare our residences and businesses for fire season. Then operations, that's all about safety, efficiency, economy. Fighting fire is expensive, very expensive, and it takes up a sizable amount of the Forest Service budget. Varies from year to year, but it takes a lot. And then finally, resilience, that covers if you've had a fire, recovering from the fire, restoring the community, healing the forest, tending to the land, and the cycle starts over again, essentially. Hopefully we learn from our experience and are able to do more, better as we go along. I'm doing 2 things at once here. Okay, so first off, intelligence. And I think of that as sensors, satellites, and speed, because we've had a sensor revolution essentially in the last couple of decades, and that trickles down. We've got more types of sensors, smaller sensors, lighter weight, and they cost a lot less than they used to. And we have ways to store that data that they're collecting in a lot of new ways. So we tend to think cameras, we see video of fires, but there's a lot beyond what our eyes can see. We've got multispectral data. You'll see some things here in a few minutes where it's been enhanced using the multispectral data to give another layer of meaning to satellite photos and such. NDVI, that's basically just a particular bandwidth or set of bandwidths that are used to bounce light off of vegetation, essentially, and collect data about that tells us about the health of the forest, health of grasslands, things like that. So it's important to know how the plant life is faring. Infrared, near infrared. Infrared's like that, the thermal data, you've probably seen pictures, where they do something and they do a picture of a house and see where energy's leaking, where they're losing heat. But fire departments, wildland fire, use it a lot for determining hotspots in areas where you've been putting the fire out. Have you missed something? You'll see some other applications of infrared here in a minute. Audio, you don't usually think of audio too much in terms of sensors, but I worked with a guy, actually, he was on my software development team. He was from Bolivia, and they were using small sensors, what they call IoT, Internet of Things, and parts from old cell phones. And they were building these little things that they go and they put out on the trees, and they'd space them out. And they were picking up fire starts from the sound. They heard crackling, and that's how they were. So that was his master's in computer science project, where he had a very creative use of things that a lot of us just tend to throw away. So smoke, air quality, very important. The effects on our communities was the smoke, contaminants in smoke, all kinds of different things about that. So sensors for that, sensors for different chemicals in the smoke as well, chemistry of fire. And then in some instances, motion sensors. So, oh, and this guy on the tower here, this was a project in, let's see, it was Washington, Oregon, Nevada, Idaho, BLM, and let's see, University of Nevada and a university in Oregon. They got together. They had this seismic sensing on this mountain, and they relayed the data using microwave. That's not the camera, that's the microwave. And they've got this network. So they got to thinking, well, what if we piggyback onto this existing network? They put a camera up on a tower, a high definition, high speed camera, pan, tilt, zoom, remotely operated. And then the cameras also provide a live feed to the website and a feed to their data collection every 6 frames per second. And the pictures on the web page update every 10 seconds. So it's just continually scanning and looking for basically smoke as the first sign. And it's been very successful for them. They've detected thousands of fires. This has been going on. It started 10 years ago and been operational for just a couple of years. I was looking, I thought I had the number of fires here, but I don't seem to. Okay, so they proved it out that it worked, and then they've now got a network across Oregon and Washington of 41 similar cameras. And that microwave network is critical to getting that data where it needs to go. And you can view it online. It's alertwildfire.org. And just, I'll be mentioning things, don't worry about it. I've got I'm going to be putting it up on a website if you want to, and then I will have this this presentation available for download too. So if anybody wants, you don't need to be making notes or anything. It'll be available. Okay. Next. Satellites. Big ones, little ones, all kinds of satellites. That one we saw in the earlier slide was the GOES-S, which became GOES-17 once it was actually launched. It works as a pair of two geostationary Earth observation satellites. And basically, they're shooting at the Earth like this, and they get about 90% of the globe. And it's pretty interesting. You think of two satellites moving with the Earth and staying static to each other so that they get this kind of stability. Now, this is obviously California. This was in 2020, and I can use the little right here. Here we go. Keep your eye on that. Got a huge pyrocumulonimbus cloud coming up there, as well as you've got smoke columns all through Oregon. This was a busy year. Columns up here in Northern California, but look how that thing grows. And the clarity from space. It's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Do you remember the names of those particular fires?
I can find it out. It's in my notes somewhere.
Especially the one closer to the state of Oregon. Just curious as to what.
Yeah, I was looking through this afternoon and I'm like, oh, where is that in my notes? But yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to remember, and I'm not going to remember it right offhand now. So so this particular satellite and its twin, so there have been numerous iterations of this. They've been in orbit one version or another for at least 20 years, I think. This one can collect 3 times more data, 4 times the image resolution, and scan the planet 5 times faster than its immediate successor or its immediate precursor. It's mind-boggling how the technology has changed, which is great. I mean, we've learned so much about weather, climate, and the environment through this. And there's just more data. This is super useful for the monitoring of smoke and dust, helping plan, air flights, traffic, when to issue alerts and where. This is huge for decision making. And this is near real time. So we're really starting to understand more of what's going on in our atmosphere through this. Okay, and then next.
Not going.
Or did I? Oops, I think I turned it around. Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
It was me. Okay. So all that data sitting there, well, there are people who, I'm sure everyone knows all the stuff about AI, machine learning. The robots are going to take over the world, right? Now we got the robots working here.
With land parched from drought and temperatures on the rise, wildfires have become large. With land parched from drought and temperatures on the rise, wildfires have become larger and deadly.
Go back.
Is it supposed to have sound?
Yeah, it should have sound.
No, it's not coming out. It was before.
Yeah, we have it.
Let me just test the speaker real quick.
Okay. Technical.
I could hear that. Could anyone else hear that?
Are we ready?
Maybe. I don't
Let's
know.
see if that.
With land parched from drought and temperatures on the rise,
That's not why it's not coming through here.
Okay.
with land
So
parched from
essentially,
drought and
the
temperatures
narrator's
on the
talking
rise,
about the
wildfires
scope
have
of the
become
wildfire
larger and deadlier.
problem
In
and
2018,
saying
California
that-
saw the largest and deadliest wildfires in its history.
Talking about the
The
campfire.
notorious campfire spread at a rate of 80
fire in
football
the
fields
state.
per minute. That means detecting wildfires as early as possible and responding quickly.
The severity of the fire,
Have become
yeah.
essential to thwarting
Getting
a
little
potentially
lag
deadly
too, but
disaster.
we'll catch it here pretty
And one
quick.
startup says it's found a way to spot fires
All the
just
air
minutes
ops
after
going
they
on
spark.
there.
From the image being captured in
Huge
space
destructive fire.
to us producing an
These two
alert, it's about
guys-
9 minutes start to finish.
Based in
Not
Santa
only
Fe,
are
New
they
Mexico,
nerds, they're super
Descartes
brains.
Labs uses cloud-based artificial intelligence to analyze
Okay,
huge swaths
calculus
of real-time
is like
satellite imagery and
addition for
identify
them.
fires.
And we decided to
taking
focus on
data-
satellite imagery just because there's so
essentially what
much of
they're
it.
doing
And this
is
means there's lots and
They're
lots of
taking
data about the
those
planet.
satellite data
Today, fire authorities most often rely on
holding that
human
data
spotters to
or
report a
something,
blaze.
and then all
But
these
Descartes'
other
AI platform
satellites
scans thermal
that are
imagery from
orbiting
NOAA satellites to look for what the
constantly
company
picking
calls
up
heat
huge amounts of
anomalies.
data.
And this turns out to be a pretty
And they're
challenging problem
comparing
because
the
the temperature of the
temperature of
Earth
the
is
Earth
always changing. And we basically seek out these
for those
hotspots by
satellites
modeling what the Earth would look
with
like if
what's
there wasn't a fire
happening,
there, and then comparing that to
and
the
they're
image that we
comparing
get
that
from the
using
GOES 16 and
machine
17
learning
satellites.
AI
And if we notice a
to
big
pick out fire
discrepancy,
stars.
then that's a pretty
They've
good
got it
indicator
down
that there's a
to
fire
9
there.
The company
minutes.
says it's
They
already
picked
pinpointed exact locations for
the
4,700
Kincaid fire.
fires and is currently testing a
picked it up in
wildfire
9
alert
minutes.
system with the local forestry division in New
Where the
Mexico.
lag is right now. what
But
they're
Descartes
trying
sees a
to
future
do
where it could help
is
fire authorities in
they
other states
contact
too.
I think the Kincaid
the
fire is
agency
a
that
good
contacted
example
Cal Fire,
of how this
and it
technology
was a
could change
half
how we respond
hour
to fires.
before
In October
actually got
2019, the
someone
Kincaid
out,
fire started
over
in
the
Sonoma
fire
County,
in a
California,
plane,
and went on to scorch more
and it
than
was another 2 hours,
77,000
2 to
acres
3
of
hours
land.
before they
The
announced
company
it.
says it generated an alert before most
So
people
there
even knew
was-
the fire
it's the lag
existed.
time
We
of
detected
getting
it
word
about
out,
10 minutes
getting
after it
things
started,
rolling.
but it was a lot more challenging
That's
for
what they're
people
working
because
on
this fire
now.
started at
Because they got
around
this
9:30
down.
at night,
They are-
and
it's
it wouldn't be
been
until half an hour
amazingly
after we had
fast.
already broadcast our alert that Cal Fire would have a plane over the fire, and another few hours
And
until they
then-
actually
so
reported
here's where they're
it
talking
publicly.
about what I just
To
told
the team, it's evidence of the system's advantage over human
so
spotters. Of course, to
traditionally,
really make an impact,
we've
the technology
relied
will
on
need to
people
integrate with firefighting
seeing
authorities that
smoke.
can respond to the fires on the ground.
It's all about making
And
sure that less fires
that's
slip through the
slow
cracks and
and
go on to become
uncertain.
these massive mega fires.
So
The company's
This is a
ambitions
huge
don't
advance.
stop there.
They
It's
are
currently
starting
using
to
the
use
same
it
technology
here,
to find methane leaks in
for
oil
methane
fields and
detection,
scan
the
crops
same
in Africa to
technology,
identify potential
same
food
underlying
shortages.
data.
Other companies are working on
agriculture
similar
there,
technology as well.
There's lots of different ways you can
doing other
apply
things.
this AI technology at scale
this is
and
like a
try to
really big
monitor
deal.
the
Oop. And I'm hitting my buttons too hard. Okay, so in your mind, think of this vast pile of data, okay? And there are huge numbers of people trying to make sense of that data, because by itself, without human and then now AI and machine learning, finding ways to interpret it and figure out what does this mean and how can we use it, that's the thing. And the sheer volume of data too. So here we go. So the first part of this is more geared to the average resident of Flagstaff or anywhere else in a, in a wildland urban interface. Anybody here in fire, training for fire, to be a firefighter, anything like that? Okay. There's a few things I've got that are mainly just for firefighters, but I just wanted to check. I'll touch on them, but I won't spend a lot of time there. This is basically a consolidated dashboard that NAU did. And it's got, wrong. I keep hitting the wrong button, Rusty. Okay, there. Okay, so we got the wildfire dashboard from Arizona State Forestry, weather, two different weather ones from Weather Service. We've got storms, weather watches, flooding, and then and this also is interactive. You can go get situation reports and drought monitoring. If there's a fire somewhere near you, you can go on there and check it out in more detail. They got layers. You can interact with all this. There's some emergency operations center. This is a data reporting thing that firefighters use. An incident command that they report out after the fire. Prescribed burns, weather, snowfall, all kinds of things, different time periods. And then finally over here, we've got our Coconino County situation report, what's going on. It's not real active right now, but you can also go, out, pop it up where you can see the whole thing. So really useful to bookmark and have available. It's a great thing that NAU did. A lot of info there. Oops. Okay. More info. So you want to stay informed day to day, but as wildfire season approaches, you probably want to get on this site. This is wildfirerisk.org, and it is done by Forest Service and USDA, but it is aimed to give you a lot of background. It's all interactive, and people are saying, well, what's the big deal about tech? It's just a website, right? It's what lies behind the website. We've gotten jaded about, internet streaming, there's a ton of information here to help you understand fire, understand what's done to help communities prepare. And then there's a bunch of stuff for you to prepare individually on this site. It's really useful. A lot of interactivity. And then that site basically directs you back to your state. That's available to everybody all over the country. It's got stuff about different areas, different types of fuels, things like that. Here's where we start getting down to Arizona. So Arizona has its own data hub. So to remember that big pile of data that sits on top of all this data. And they've created these risk maps, primarily with satellite and historical fire data, using all the things we've already talked about to analyze. And then this is interactive too. You can go in there and you can see the threat levels, and then keep missing this. So there's all this stuff you can do down here. You can print it out, you can measure, You can zoom in and out just like you would in Google Maps. Toggle the base map, make things transparent, alter the data, find your address. So there's lots of stuff you can spend. If you're the least bit geeky, you can spend a lot of time on this. But it's got a huge amount of information about the area. And then you can zoom in. But you can't guess where this is. Zoom in further. Hey, that's one of the layers underneath. And you can make it transparent and all that stuff. So right here, we're right here. And that, so I had prepared one thing that I cut. There are some sites out there for basically tech startups, some of them from San Francisco and stuff, you know, Valley Tech Bros for the most part, that have started some AI assessments to where you can drill down, put your address in, enter information about your home. On some of them, others it's more automated. It just takes the place and it uses some of the same data that's behind the earlier map we looked at with all the colors indicating the risk. And I was playing with it, I was familiar with them, but I took the house, it sits right here on the corner of Lockett and 4th. And there's another larger property down here with a number of buildings. So I was looking to see, you can't, you basically have to pay if it's commercial. And I was just scoping out their service to see if I thought it was any good. And I got a 10.
Copy your laser pointer so the folks on Zoom can see where you're pointing.
Okay, so that one had a 10 out of 10 wildfire risk. This one down here and all the trees had a 7 out of 10. Okay, and then I also looked at some other properties that I've done assessments on. One out in Parks that is close to Sycamore Canyon, if you remember the Raphael fire. It said it was a 4 risk. So, and it had a 9 risk of flooding. It's up on a little hill. So I think eventually they're going to get there with those predictive services, but I'm basically telling people, use it at your own risk, compare several, and then use your own judgment if you think it really reflects your true risk. And you can get assessments from your local fire department, people like me, other people, that you can get advice if you're worried about your risk level. I would not depend on those AI services, not at this point anyway. They may get there, but they're going off of that map. And because this property and this property are both in the ember zone, this one here, this one down here, they're within the ember zone of the peaks, obviously. Why the discrepancy, I don't know. It's just one of those interesting things to be aware of. I think in the future, there may be ways that it will be more useful. I know they're working on it, but they've still got a little ways to go. Okay. So there are barriers you can do. And this is a cool one. This is the General Sherman tree in Sequoia National Park. I was just there 2 years ago. It's just so amazing, those trees. And they were wrapping this. It's basically the same kind of material that is in fire shelters that firefighters use to protect themselves from the heat. Direct flame contact at a high temperature, it won't work. But if the temperature's lower or if it's a ways away, it does it. These big guys are adapted to fire, but they're stressed. They've been through a lot with climate change, so they're giving them a little help here. There are also gels and foams that you can use. Some of those seem to be pretty good, and there's something that many people could apply themselves. They aren't cheap. And again, there is some question about the environmental friendliness or not of certain ones of those. So you have to, read your material safety data sheets on those and think through if that's something you'd want to use. Know your economic tolerance, your environmental tolerance, and then also your physical tolerance to actually using some of these things. These wraps, they have some ways to make that easier. Gels are basically a spray on and then you mist it down to really hydrate it well. There's a bunch of different ones. Sprinklers and misters. Some people have used those to good effect, but just be aware that if you get high winds, a lot of that water is going to blow away, and you have to plan to not have power and to not have your municipal water source. So if you're going to go some of these routes, you got to do your research, but there are possibilities. And here's this one supposedly held up pretty well. 76-mile-per-hour winds and a full burn through fire. Well, I don't know exactly what they mean by burn through fire. This is from one of the manufacturer's sites, so I don't know how far to go with that, but I have heard they did some of the stuff was really early. The Zane Grey cabin they wrapped, and it survived. So it's been around for a while, and it has improved. So this is one of the ones. Some of them, I'm gonna point up. Dang it! Sorry about all the bouncing around. I meant to hit these little buttons are really close. Some of these wraps, they even do the roof as well, depending on the roof material and depending on the manufacturer and stuff. So think about that as well. One little click. So I was thinking that this might, I didn't know if some of the people from the fire science program might wander through, but this was kind of for them. But it is kind of fun to think about. Back in 2014, as an ex-firefighter and a software developer, I had this great idea. I'm going to make simulations, VR simulations. And it takes too many people and too much money to do that as one or just a couple of people. Now, 10 years later, the stuff is really coming on the market. There's some great stuff for structure protection, people that need to train. So it's much safer. You don't have to, you're still going to need to use the burn building if you're going to be a structure firefighter, but you can prepare and you can get a sense of what it's like, when you go in and you can't see because the smoke's too thick and you got your hose and you kind of get this idea of things that if you weren't prepared a little more beforehand might kind of throw you a little bit. So it's really good for that. And wildfire's lagging behind a little bit in that they don't have a lot of scenarios. There are a couple companies that have wild end. And so, and being in the wildland urban interface, good to have some structure knowledge, some structure skills if you're called on. But pump operations, when I mentioned on motion sensors, one of the simulators that they've got, you stand on it and it adjusts the vibration, just like you were standing on the engine, working the knobs and the levers and the dials bump up when the water starts to flow. You get the little jump. So, but where it's most mature at this point, aviation, because there've been aviation simulators for a long time. And incident command, because they've had a wildland incident command simulator back in DC at FEMA for 15 years, maybe 15. It's a lot cheaper to have a headset and get your crew to, these things also do not just solo, but group. With the VR headsets, you can do group training, which I thought was pretty cool. So it's come down a lot in price, a lot more accessible for little departments to get a grant and actually use it for training. Okay, now we're getting to the front line. So I like the gee-whiz tech, but underneath and connecting everything we're talking about here is the communication and the coordination, particularly on the big fires where you've got units coming in from all over the country. You may have 2,000 firefighters or more on a really big fire. And you've got to feed them, dispatch them, get them where they need to go. And you got to have operational radios that you have to have interoperability. And you got to know that the person next to you is trained to the level they say they are. And they need to know that you are. So the National Interagency Fire Center is a group of about 600 people in Boise that do coordination and support. They coordinate federal, state agencies, tribal agencies. They do this massive coordinating and support rapid mobilization and logistics, which is a huge endeavor. On one fire, suppose you have 50 major fires going on spread around the country. And you may be helping Canada out too. So they're big into the information technology, communications protocols, predictive services like what we've seen with all the weather and prediction, fire behavior predictions, things like that. But they're also big on the standards and qualifications. Have you trained to the level that you know, the person, your crew chief says you are? You know, are you safe? Do you know, do you have not just training, but do you have experience, and what kind of experience? Just a fun fact. Let's see, they manage 32,000 firefighters a year. Incidents all over, sometimes support Canada, obviously, but also Australia at times. We trade people back and forth. Luckily, theirs is usually the opposite. It is the largest civilian radio cache in the world, because to have interoperable communications when all these people are coming into a fire camp and getting checked out, you got to have your radios, and you've got to have the right frequencies. So I thought that was, I didn't realize that they were, but it makes sense. Then our local Emergency Operations Center, this has seen some duty in the last few years. And then over on the right side, sorry, I did it again. I keep moving my thumb. Consider it preview. So this is where you can sign up to get emergency notifications on your phone. Hopefully all of you have already done that, or evacuation maps. get on the, and then smart 911. So those are some things that really important. Another good thing to bookmark, they've got a dashboard of their own, some of which mirrors that was on that NAU site, but they have a specific one and it's got evacuation maps. It's really useful. You can see of what status when there's a fire for your neighborhood. Are you know, is it get out now, be ready, or just kind of chill, but be aware. Okay, new firefighter safety system. Colorado company, but they've been working with the Arizona Department of Forestry and Fire Management. It's a little unit. It's about so big, about 5 pounds, portable, so that each firefighter can have one on them. They're viewing this as a safety device. It tracks GPS, tracks their location, real time, uses a satellite rather than a cell phone or radio. So, you know, you've got redundancy on communications. If your cell phone, if your radio goes out, you've got another way. Someone knows where you are. And it has some other sensors and things too. So they see, it was basically after the Yarnell Hill fire. This guy decided there's got to be a way to let command know where people are, what the situation is, and not lose contact. So that's what that's about. Arizona they had 6 of the 13 crews that Arizona fields. They tested this last fire season, and they're looking to have all 13 crews outfitted with these this year. So that's pretty cool. And that's one of the Granite Mountain guys in 2012. Crewed aviation. So this is fairly familiar, and we don't tend to see the technology behind it, but they're pretty amazing. I mean, it's not new tech so much. There's some pretty amazing technology in the planes and helicopters that are used. Well, right now, the Forest Service is reviewing an upgrade initiative. They're going to be upgrading the equipment across their aviation units. There's also just about everybody's turning over sensors as newer sensors come available at lower costs, more capable. There's a constant rotation of upgrades going on as it can be afforded. And then they too, so the crews on the ground will have these drop blocks. They have in a lot of the aviation resources right now automated flight following. Same idea, real-time connection back to incident command. They've got constant updates. They know exactly where they are. Starts to make coordinating things easier, safer. Also, there are some other complications in the aviation space. And then this plane right here, this is one of NASA's Armstrong Flight Research Center. And this just happened to be, they flew a mission over the state's wildfires, and they were working with the Forest Service to validate the Forest Service instruments. They had the same kinds of instrumentation on the two, and the Forest Service wasn't sure that they were getting the right information, that it was accurate. So these guys went out, flew it, and at the same time they collected some other data for recovery planning. So I thought that was just sort of a cool thing, helping out. So here, UAS, unmanned or uncrewed aviation systems, and they really are a system. this is a complication in the skies over wildfires, because you get people with their drones just out there. Hey, look at this. Very dangerous. But there are some real reasons to use drones on fires with professional pilots, with a professional crew in some cases, so that you've got visual observers. You've got, not just one person who's trying to keep track of everything, because there's too much going on up there in the air to have any mistakes. So, and they really are a system. That's what the S is for. It's the point here. So here's the drone itself. You see its battery packs. It's got a location sensor here, props, and you can attach various types of payloads to them. There's a charger. So that's the equipment piece of the system. And then this is my favorite video. Okay.
I made a couple of adjustments. Maybe we'll have sound. The people on Zoom could hear it, but we couldn't.
Oh, okay. Let's see if we hear it. I can narrate it if I have to. I've watched this more than once. So let's see. Let's see what we got. It's a manufacturer's video, but this
Ignis is an unmanned aerial system, plastic sphere dispensing machine that is made up of 4 major subsystems. The hopper is the first subsystem that holds ignition spheres, which are plastic balls containing a chemical powder, potassium permanganate. The powder in the ignition spheres is half of the ingredients needed to create a point ignition source. The second chemical is ethylene glycol, which is commonly found in automotive antifreeze. The antifreeze is stored in and dispensed from the second subsystem on Ignis, which is the reservoir and pumping system. This works in conjunction with the third subsystem, which is the puncturing mechanism. First, a sphere stored in the hopper is forced down the chute into the puncture mechanism. The puncture motor pierces a needle through the sidewall of the sphere, and the pumps inject a very precise amount of antifreeze. Then the sphere is dispensed to the ground, where it ignites 30 to 45 seconds later. This process is repeated up to 120 times per minute until the hopper is emptied. The fourth critical subsystem that tightly integrates everything from flying the drone to planning and executing firing operations and then generating after-action reports is the software that by popular demand has become the go-to app for UAS operators on fires. The highly sophisticated code is transparent to the operator, who interacts with a user interface specifically designed for wildland firefighters to be able to plan ignition missions, monitor the drone's progress, search for hotspots, and drop fire in inaccessible terrain. All of this while operating a safe distance from the fire line. This technology is a reality today.
Okay, we'll skip the commercial part. So that gets us to resilience. I just think that's like the coolest thing. Okay, so kind of the part of the cycle where everything we start to pull all we've learned, and now it's after the fire, and you've got disaster recovery, forest restoration, and the cycle of continued adaptation. Now, recovery is sometimes referred to, or often referred to as the second disaster. It is the continuation. You still got all the mop up, all that stuff to do, but there's a whole cascade of effects after a fire, particularly in the interface. You've got people and animals with immediate needs. They may be without a home, food, water. They may be isolated somewhere. They may be in an evacuation center. It just becomes a big logistical challenge, and it's an emotional challenge for everyone concerned. So and people may have lost their home, their livelihood, pets, hopefully not family members, but it happens. So it hits a community hard, and I think people here understand that. And it disrupts the community in ways that you don't necessarily even think of at first. And it has ripple effects out, you know, from even the people that are directly impacted, but through the whole community. I put another drone on here because I wanted to put a drone on here. Communicate. This one has. Okay, now. Sorry. So, pointer button. So, light. This can have a speaker put on it. So if you've got somebody who is isolated or you can't reach, you can talk to them. If it's dark, in that sort of situation, you can fly a drone in the dark if you're in the right, you know, if you're on an incident, something like that. You can't normally, or you shouldn't without certain waivers, but you can see this has its little sensors. It's got its camera. This here is a thermal imaging camera. So there's a lot you can pack on. You can put a RTK for surveying on this drone. So you can do a lot with a drone that size. Mapping, hazard detection with it, survey areas that you want to decide, you know, is this apt to flood? Are we in danger of a debris flow? Do we have stuff that's going to come down this mountain when it rains hard in the monsoon? And what probable path is that going to take? And then to assess property damage, do insurance claims, things like that, FEMA. So that's that part of it. And it's, yeah, it can come at a very difficult time. So another part is we have to learn to adapt to living in a fire-prone ecosystem. And indigenous people were here a long time before us, the settlers that came in later, who did not realize that indigenous people were actually doing land management, essentially, cultivating it for food, basket material, all kinds of healing herbs, and also protecting the land by keeping the severity of burns down. So it's our last little video here.
This weekend, we're here in Yosemite in Mariposa, burning with the North Fork Mono tribe. We work with Chairman Ron Good, who for the past 2 decades has built successful relationships with government agencies, universities, and tribal members to try to bring back good fire. Dautse, she Melinda Adams, I'm from the San Carlos Apache tribe. I'm a doctoral student at the University of California, Davis, and I study cultural fire. Cultural fire is important for indigenous peoples to reclaim because we're reclaiming our land stewardship roles, our relationships, kinships with more than human relatives, and working on bringing back our languages that are tied to our sense of place. It's important to bring back cultural fire in order to try to reclaim our land stewardship roles, our cultural practices, and even our languages. It's important for non-native folks to work with us in bringing cultural fire back to the ground so that we have allyships and we have contacts in different agencies in order to try to get good fire back to the ground. So my favorite part about cultural burns is working with our cultural practitioners, working with our fire keepers and our basket weavers, listening to their oral histories, their stories, lessons. It's important for all of us to listen and learn and to try to bring back that good fire.
Okay, so something there that I don't know if you may have picked up on it or not. with prescribed burning, as it is normally practiced by Forest Service and other land management agencies, it tends to be hotter. They don't go in and clear out all this, the little stuff, the little fuels and small stuff on the ground, the weeds come around, and they were taking it off. They were physically removing it, which would not happen on a prescribed burn. So cultural burning is cool burning, and it's frequent. It's a constant cycle. It's not go in and clear out years worth of fuel and have your engine there and some of your other stuff to keep it, do your trimming, all that stuff ahead, and then burn. It's a different approach, and it's something that there's a lot more partnership happening. There are tribal fire tenders that are teaching this. So it's going to be interesting to see where this goes and what kind of balance comes out of that. And what eventually it leads us to resilience. So the community adaptation after the fire, and the continuing over the course of years as that plays itself out. Organizational cooperation, partnerships, public, private, nonprofit, where you're building a cohesive framework. And actually Flagstaff has a really good record of doing this. There have been decades worth of fuel reduction efforts that were coordinated, grants that were applied for, and Flagstaff did really well and followed through on that really well. There's a number of initiatives, different organizations out there. NAU has their Ecological Restoration Institute, a lot of research going on. So there's some really interesting stuff going on here in Flagstaff in particular with all this. And I say, let's keep it going. Key takeaways. This was about tech. I got into some other things too. Be aware, if you're a firefighter or just a, everyday person wanting to know, well, is there some technological thing I can apply to my home to make it less likely to burn? Just be aware of its strengths and weaknesses and think of it as a tool in your toolbox. And it boils down to people caring and working together. It's just, bottom line. And thank you for coming. I'm going to take questions, and I do have a couple drones set up. If anybody wants to take a look, I'll move over there, but see if Rusty's got some questions. And you can, if you want a copy of the presentation, have any questions, or just want to talk about Wildfire Tech, give me a call. Yeah.
First, between the local dashboard that you showed and the national dashboard, the state of Arizona Department of Emergency and Military Affairs has the governor's dashboard, I believe is what it's called, and it covers the state, and it provides things from the weather forecast, air quality forecast, flooding forecast, your ongoing incident management, all of that is similar.
Rusty, not hear anything out in Zoom. I don't know what happened. Oh, you switched mics, but we can't hear.
Antarctica research. And the guy that is the head of the department at their marine research lab, totally into drones. And so he put this course together. So I took that online. That helped me prepare for my Part 107 test, but I also took another test with training with a pilot. He actually taught at Embry-Riddle, but he's got his own online teaching business now. And there are courses that you can take to learn all that, but you still got to learn how to fly one. And then I took some additional training with a company out of Colorado for more advanced training. Yeah. And thanks for mentioning that about the Arizona site. There's a little piece of that site on that NAU board, but there's a whole lot more there. And I'll make sure that's on my clickable list as well, so that people can get to that, because that is an excellent site. Anybody else? Yeah.
So you talked a lot about the BLM lands. What about the like up on the peaks? So the protected lands.
Oh, like the wilderness area and stuff. Yeah, there are special rules to all that about anything that's a declared wilderness area. There are certain things you can't do. There's a list. And you don't bring anything mechanized in there. That's a big one right there.
But here, it's a large area.
Yeah.
Covered with a lot of down, wind damage and this and that. How do you solve that with your hands behind your back?
It's a tough question. Because you're not going to go in there and do prescribed burning. You're not going to go in. I don't know. It's been a while on those rules. I don't remember all the details, and some may have changed since I was active in firefighting, but you do have your hands tied behind your back a certain amount. And it's so close to Flagstaff itself and the neighborhoods, between here and the peaks and stuff. You've got these little neighborhoods tucked in around, and you've got a huge amount of fuel there. But I don't have a good answer for that one. But great question. Anybody else? Anybody online?
No questions online.
Oh, they're quiet out there. Okay.
Yep.
I'm going to go ahead and I'll just leave that there. And if you want to come down later and look at them, I don't have batteries in them, and I've got the to hold the gimbal in place, so I'm not getting anything out of whack. This is a little drone that is good for basically mapping. You're not going to carry anything heavy in this. This is just to carry this small sensor and do mapping, usually done in a grid straight down. And then I do orbits around a structure or something like that to determine if there's damage, something like that. But it's nice. Airtime, this goes about 35 minutes if you got a fairly new battery and it's not too cold out. I've got my high altitude rotors on for working here. Anything over about 6,000 feet, it works a lot harder with the thinner air. And that'll take, but yeah, it gets cold. I haven't been flying a lot lately because it's been just as it can ice up too, just like an airplane will ice up. Yeah. Well, it's a balance. I could go really fast, but it wouldn't be as safe. And I don't want to crash into somebody's house because if I'm in too close. But these will go, generally, flies about 10, 15 miles an hour for just basic sorts of things, if I'm being careful around trees and things. If it's on a straight open area, it can go 25, 30 miles an hour. Quite a bit faster than when I'm around things that I don't want to bump into or damage. Yeah, thanks for the question. Anybody else? Okay, this drone is like that one I showed you there. It's got the protector here, but you can see a camera, thermal sensor, good for inspecting like solar panels or roofs, energy use. But one of the things that's been used a lot too, and usually they use a little bigger drones for search and rescue, but just because they've got more power and can go for a longer time, longer distance. Battery on this is about the same as that. This gets maybe another 5 or 10 minutes before it's got to come home and get a new battery. And these have to be within line of sight of the pilot. You can't fly it using the camera. It's a safety issue. Because if it's like a first person type of view, or you're just, say you're looking at, you're looking at your controller, right? Well, that means you can only see. And you have to be aware of airspace, because as a pilot, a responsible pilot and a certified pilot, you are bound to yield in airspace to any other aircraft. But a lot of recreational pilots don't know that or don't care or whatever. But this is not to go above 400 feet, not outside line of sight. There's a number of restrictions about time of day, things like that, just as a safety issue. Little drones that have cages around the props and under a certain size can fly over people. You're not supposed to fly over people with these. So it's, and the bigger they get, the more. I can fly, I'm qualified to fly up to 55-pound drone. That's a pretty big, hefty drone. That's including the payload. So like the, ping pong balls.
How much would that ping pong ball thing weigh, would you guess?
I need to look up the specs on that. I'm guessing that the overall thing is somewhere between 35 and 45 pounds. So they're getting up towards that limit. It takes there's only about 3 US manufactured drones that will handle that particular thing. Commercial drones. Just weight, got to be really careful, because anything, like if I was to hook something up, people go fishing and do weird things with these. You can very easily get it off balance and crash it if you start attaching things to it and doing things, or if you change the camera out, you got to be really careful. So, anything else? Well, thanks for coming. Enjoyed it.
Very good.